Vizrt fonts are found within the Server tab and the F tab within that. So the F stands for font. And as you can see here, I have a folder set up. I have an All Globals project folder, and then within that I have a subfolder with fonts, and even inside of that I have subfolders for my individual fonts. However you set it up is going to be up to you. So if I click on folder here, I have an Arial font, and you can see I just have 3 fonts here and no variations with that. If you don't know how to get a font into Vizrt, you can watch the importing fonts video, which will explain how to get fonts into Vizrt. So as you can see, I have 3 fonts here, Arial Black and Arial Bold. They have no variations. If I come down to my next folder here, you see I have another font, and we have the main font, and then we have a blur for each one of these as well, which we set on the import settings. If we go into our other folder here, Future, then you can see that we have more variations of fonts. So not only do we have the various bold and the thin fonts of the individual fonts, but you also have outlines and blurred fonts in this as well. And we'll get into what all of those are used for. So if you don't know, to get a font into your scene, just drag it down into your scene tree, or you could actually take the font and drag it right into the render window as well, whatever you want to do. We'll get rid of them. And now, once you have it down in your scene tree, you can click on the little ABC icon or the text icon, and it goes into the font editor. First thing you'll notice up here is the text box, and this is where you can change the text. So we can come in here and type our new font. If you need to recenter or reposition it, again, you can just use the transformation access here within the window, and you can go back into the ABC icon to go back into your font editor. So we have a couple of tabs in here, and by default, when we open a font or click on the ABC icon, we are in the basic editor. We also have a shadow tab, a clock, a character, and a special. We'll cover a video for each one of these tabs, but right now we're going to work in the basic tab. So we have this Futura font here, and we have this little drop down that you notice next to it, and we can drop this down. If we want to change it to a blur, we can, and or any of the other variations that we imported with this font. So here we have an outline, which we can change it to, and if we want to change it back to the regular font, we can do that. If at any time we want to swap out a font, we can just grab a new font within our database here and either replace it in this window, or you can go back and just drag it on top of here and it will replace the font. Below this drop down, we have our justification. So we have a justification left, a center, a right, and then we also have our Oriental Justified, which becomes active when we activate another tab within our font editor. Below that, we also have a vertical justification here. So we can have a vertical orientation top, a vertical orientation first line, a center, and a bottom. So these tell you which way the font will type. So if our vertical orientation here, as you can see, we have it set to bottom. So if we come in here and start typing new text within the text editor here, everything will grow up from the bottom. So if we want to change that at any time to the vertical or the center, we can. Let's get rid of that. Down below, we have a type which is set to geometry by default. We can also change this to texture. And when we change it to texture, it's changing it to a type of image. So it's really lowering the quality, and this is really good for optimizing fonts. Geometry, as you notice, when we turn this back on, our detail level comes up. So with geometry set, in our detail level, we have it set to auto by default, but if we take it down all the way to 6, you can see what it does to the O in this case, which you can now see the corners. So this detail is actually lowering the quality of the font a bit, but it is better for optimization sakes. However, you wouldn't want to keep the font like that. So you can change it back to 1 and or auto, whatever fits your need. Then we also have a quality here, which is set to normal by default. We also have a high, which you can change it to high, and it increases the sharpness of that font as well. So let's come over here to kerning and tracking and word spacing and leading. So if we come into our kerning here, we can just kern it just as is, and we have a little R button which will reset it back. We also have a fixed button, and that will kern it out in a fixed fashion. We also have word spacing. So with this, we can increase the space between each word that we have. Just make sure that you do have a space in between each individual word. We also have a leading, and for this to work, you need 2 lines of text. So we'll add another second line of text here, and if we use the leading here, you can see how this will separate out vertically. Now another option you have within the latest versions of Vizrt T are these individual character things here. And in case you didn't know, if you come in and place your mouse or your cursor anywhere in between two letters, you can use the Alt and the arrow key to kind of kern things out or track things out a little bit more. However, you can also do it with these buttons. So if we highlight two letters here, we can also use these little boxes here to kern it out between the letters. And you see, you just need to left click on this and it will start spreading out these letters. So you see that we have the R and the T highlighted, and in here it's going to tell you that it's going to spread out between the Z and the R. So as I increase and keep clicking this, you can see the R and the T moving out together. And if you want to decrease it, you can do the same. You notice a little box comes up, so if you can use the left mouse button or the right mouse button to increase it in higher increments. Within the font now, we can have some additional effects. For instance, if we just want to bold and or italicize a certain word, so for instance, we want to bold the Vizrt T in here, we can click on it or highlight it within the text editor and come down within the effect and hit the bold. We can now italicize it. We have an underline, a subscript, and a superscript as well. So you can see we have our Vizrt T highlighted, and if we click on the underline, we also have an option down here to move our underline position. So we can move it up and down vertically, and we also have a U width. We can increase or decrease the width of our underline. Let's take the underline off and we come over here into our colored section. We can now colorize a font without having to use a material. So again, we just need to highlight a word, and if you want to highlight it all, you can do that, or individual words you can. We want to come down to the color tab, turn on colored, and now we can adjust the color. We want to make it any color we want. We also have an alpha, which will alpha down that particular word or letters that you're going for. RGB, HSV, so whichever you need to use. We also have the lighted, so if you change it to lighted instead of colored, what it's going to do is pick out the colors from the lights. So here you can see the Vizrt T was gray because our light was gray by default. If I change our light to blue in our light setting, it will now change to blue. If you want to know more about the lights, you can watch the lights video.